Hello, hi. I'm Obeng, and this is how to get stuff done. And today I have a particularly useful, I hope, pet to share with you, people engagement tool to share with you. It's about making sure things actually get done. So not only learning, but making stuff happen. So let's jump on Cube, and I'm going to share some learning about the famous Lander log, learning and application log. Okay, welcome to Cube. Where, as you know, the sun is always shining. I'm sure the sun is shining somewhere. There you go. The sun is shining up here. Can you see up in the blue? Yeah, there you go. Sun's always shining. I'm standing in front of what's called a course designer. A course designer is how we put together courses with detail on Cube, so we know what's happening and who's going to do, and so on. But I'll start with a memory. I have a feeling which has never left me, and the feeling is quite important. It's the first time I ever scored 5 out of 5. I was at a place called Ashridge Business School, which, if you've seen pictures of it, it's a great big mansion. It's where they filmed Harry Potter, a beautiful half-a-mile frontage, beautiful building, Earl of Bridgewater, built in beautiful Tottenham Clunch creamy stone. And I was teaching at Ashridge, and I was running a course. It was a 3-week course called the D course, and it was for people from around the world. And I'd been learning how to teach. And in learning how to teach, I'd been slowly trying to improve what I did. So I started off by, first of all, doing things like learning everybody's name, by making sure it was happening. But the incentives we had at the end, at the start, at the time, where Ashridge was successful because it had, that's not the clearest image, it had really good teaching. Why? Because the incentive was really simple. At the end of the session, you got a happy sheet. It was actually a 5-point Likert scale to say how well the course had gone, how much people enjoyed your teaching sessions. And that was basically shared with everyone, shared with the team, so everyone could see what your scores were. And the higher your scores, the more likely people were to invite you on their programs to teach. And the more teaching you did, the more secure your job. And also you got space to go and do your own thing because you hit your teaching hours earlier. So that was the whole incentive behind it. So I was learning how to teach. I'd used the statistical process control to work out where my scores were coming from, who was sitting where. I realized I didn't look to the sides very much because I always got lower scores there. And I remember the feeling on that day when, for the first time, from a course of about 30 people, I scored a perfect 5 out of 5. Everyone scored 5 out of 5. Excellent. And I just felt elated. But that was the metric we were using at Ashridge, and it was about making sure we did better courses, more engaging than all the other business schools and universities who would just use the old method. And this is another image. This is a classic children's teaching learning plan, where basically you say, what is it the kids need to learn, or what is it we have to have as the topics, and you go through the topics and so on and so forth. So this one gave the incentives of deliver well. This one gave the incentives of make sure you've covered all the topics ready for the exam or whatever it is. And this is another person who really influenced me. His name is Edward de Bono, and he was famous for his talks. He's the guy who invented lateral thinking. So if you have the expression lateral thinking or 6 thinking hats, that's Edward de Bono. He was from Malta. And he was famously known for coming on stage with an overhead projector like this. I mean, even when we had PowerPoints, and he would handwrite everything he did. And he would scroll it up as it was. It's brilliant experiences. So anyway, that's Edward de Bono. Why do I tell you about Edward de Bono? Because the whole thing is you have to change the way in which your incentives line up. And that's crucial if you're going to make sure that you actually make a difference in terms of the world. It works like this, and I'll try and explain it. There is a sort of an old status quo. I'll just call it old SQ. And in that old SQ, we have some needs. So some people decide they have some stuff which they need, and we have some wants. Okay, and that's generally what the situation is. That means everything is simple as I'm feeling hungry. Okay, that's needs and wants. And then you go into the next step, and the next step is what we call requirements. And requirements are, I need something hot to eat. Okay, I'm doing these in red because they are sort of requirement-ish. And then we go into, okay, well, let's have a look in the fridge and see what's in there. Those are called inputs, okay? And inputs could be people, resources, I don't know, anything, okay? And then we hit the meat in the middle of the sandwich, and that is basically the activity. And the activity comes in 2 formats, either as a project where things happen differently from one to the next, as you make your sandwich, take the bread, butter it, and so on, or they happen as a process where one person is buttering the sandwich and buttering and buttering, and someone else is putting the cheese on the cheese on the cheese on, etc. So those are the ways in which activities tend to happen. Process a project. And then that leads you to your sandwich, your output. Something comes out. Now, the output is really useful because that's helpful, but the output is not the goal. What you're after is the outcome. When you eat the sandwich and you are no longer hungry, and then you have a new status quo. Now, most organizations don't understand this process, so they do what we call work about work. They spend their time on training needs analysis, which they don't do anything with, or they plan a project, they get all the resources together and they try and run the project, and when it's delivered, great, but nobody in the company actually applies it and no customers ever buy anything. So actually it's of no fundamental use. And Edward de Bono's famous phrase was, learning is useless unless it degenerates into action. I think it was him. Maybe it was Balvin, I can't remember. Anyway, either way, so that's really crucial. Now when you come to people, what you discover is you start off with somebody who has a learning need. They want to know how to do something. I don't know how to do it. I want to know what's supposed to be done. So you work out a training need. You work out the requirements. What is required? And then you start to put together your program. Oh, I'll do a bit of this teaching. I'll do a simulation here, and so on and so forth. And most people then kick into a process or a project. And I used to do that. And then I discovered that there's a problem with human beings, because when they come in, they have these things called egos. You may have come across them before. I put a little halo above their heads. And the ego basically tells them that they're wonderful. So even as you're giving them information, they're saying things like, I always do that. I've always known that. And so on. So you can put them through the process and they can come out and it looks like they've gone through and learned something, tick, but actually nothing's going to be different, because when you put them back into work for the outcome, they will just go back to doing what they were doing before. So in my world, what we did was we looked at the learning cycle and I decided I needed another step in there. So the step which I needed was not just the learning cycle or give them something to do, let them think about it, come up with theory and go and apply it. But I realized the reflection didn't always work. So I started to do, and if you see my TED talk, you'd have seen me do this thing where I ask which of these horizontal lines is longer and everyone gets the answer wrong. If you've been to one of my sessions, this is one of my favorites. You've probably seen people doing this one, the famous 1, 2, 3 game, where all of a sudden they realize that what they believed all along is completely wrong. And you can see them laughing as the realization dawns. That's called disconfirmation. Disconfirmation is crucial because disconfirmation is the sort of the star part of the process, where as this person comes in here, you remove their ego because they know what they're doing is wrong and it doesn't work. And they go through a little bit of a depression. And then as you give them the process, they learn lots. So by the time they get to the outcome and the output, they're raring to go and they want to put it into action. This confirmation is central. So how do I achieve this? Partly the design, but also the use of what we call a lambda log all the way through. Either learn by showing a lambda log. So we keep asking people, not about what about what they've learned. We say, what have I learned after each session? And we get them to write in sentences. Why? Because you can't fudge things in sentences. Bullet points, you can write engagement. But if you have to write in a sentence, you have to say, I learned how engagement should be done, or I learned not to do X, Y, Z with engagement. So it's really important, and the facilitator or tutor can spot whether they've learned or not. The second thing was we ask them, and this they always struggle with, how are you going to do it? How are you going to apply it? How are you going to apply it? And they always go, oh, I'll think about that later. Because they're human beings, they don't want to think about it. It's easier, okay? We get them to work in sentences, and this is what we call learning and application log. What happened? So they have to describe the experience. Eddie made us do 1, 2, 3, okay? What I learned was I concentrate too much on my own outputs and not on what other people are saying. Great. How are you going to apply this? In my next meeting, I'm going to listen to my team members. When are you going to do it? In my next meeting, I'm going to do it at the end. I'm going to summarize what I think everyone else has said. What do you expect to happen? Well, in about a week's time, my team members should say, I'm really enjoying coming to your meetings. So we get them to fill in the whole lambda log, and then they come back and review it here. It works well with individuals. It works even better if you do team teaching, because we tend to work in quints on cue, groups of 5, because when you've got 5 people in normal jobs, if it's one person, okay, that's great, they have to be disciplined. If it's 2, one of them always misses the drum beat or misses the meeting. If it's 3, it's a small number, nobody's going to fight. 5 is enough for you to get momentum and enough richness in discussion. So we get the quints to start to talk about what they did so they can watch each other learn and basically steal from each other. So that's a landlog. I recommend, if you're on your own watching this particular how session, just get a copy from the quick guide. Okay, https://cube.cc/pets/landlog. Download a copy and just use it through today and see what you learned today and what you're going to do differently. Because tomorrow you don't have to be the same person as you are today. And if you haven't had Disconfirmation yet, let me just tell you, the fact you're watching this means that you really know you need to learn. So that's me. I've been Edward de Bono. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, because then you get this content all the time, every single day, something new. Some things will really resonate, others less so, but you never know. The world might change and something else which didn't resonate will become relevant. If you want more reading, you can subscribe to my LinkedIn, where I have a newsletter every week, which aligns and builds on these different performance engagement tools. So I've been Edward de Bono. Go and do landlog. Go and learn. Change the world. Make yourself tomorrow better than yourself today.